What's important is that this series of events, any kind of retreat by Simone Biles in this scenario, would have been unthinkable just a few years ago. It's yet another sign of just how thoroughly the right has won on the issue of gender ideology. There are few institutions in this country that have disgraced themselves more thoroughly in recent days than the little-known Champlain Park High School in Champlain, Minnesota. This is a school that's just won the Class 4A Minnesota Girls State Softball Championship by fielding a male as their star pitcher in every single game. And this male pitcher, a 17-year-old junior named Charlie Marissa Rothenberger, pitched all 21 innings across 3 games of the girls' championship tournament, because they do 7-inning games in softball. And what do you know? Champlain Park won all 3 games. Rothenberger capped off his performance by throwing a complete game shutout, allowing only 3 hits in the process. And that's just the championship round. He also pitched a complete game shutout in the quarterfinals. And overall, in the entire postseason, Rothenberger allowed only 2 runs in 35 innings. Now, everybody involved in this farce, from the school district to the coaches to the parents to the athlete himself, should be barred from any kind of competitive activity for the rest of their lives. They should face more serious consequences, which may indeed be coming. The school district has already been sued. But at the moment, like most cheaters, these people seem to have convinced themselves that they did nothing wrong. In interviews, Rothenberger and his coach have suggested that they're simply better competitors than their opponents. They managed to vary their pitch types and pitch speeds, and their opponents just didn't measure up. So here's an interview from last season to give you an idea.
And then in the 7th, it's Rothenberger shutting things down with their 10th strikeout of the game. The Rebels get the win, 2-1.
I think it was just spinning like my rise ball and pitches to the zone, mixing different speeds and keeping them off balance. It's been high energy all the time, having a strong defense and picking each other up after every out, being able to string a couple hits together and getting runs.
We're great in the circle. Our pitchers do a phenomenal job. We have 2 young pitchers, Ava Abramson and Marissa Rothenberger, and they've been doing a phenomenal job. They keep us in every game, and then we string hits together. Chaska's a top 10 team. I mean, they've been in it all year.
Now, watching this coach speak, any sane person has to fight to suppress their vomit reflex. I mean, imagine celebrating your sports acumen and acting like you're some incredible coach with an incredible team when you have a boy pitching every single one of your games in a girls' softball league. The gall that's required to stand there with a straight face as you cheat in the most flagrant way imaginable while pretending everything is completely normal is hard to comprehend. I mean, pathetic does not even begin to describe it. And of course, the parents who allow this man to coach their daughters as he teaches them how to cheat are just as culpable. Everything about this story is revolting. And the school district knows that. So does the league. And that's why they've locked down their social media posts so that no one can reply to them. Here's what the Minnesota State High School League posted before locking the comments, quote, "Meet Champlain Park, the Class 4A softball state champion for 2025. Then they attached a team picture, including the boy who dominated the competition. Now, Riley Gaines noticed the league's decision to censor replies, and to point out the league's cowardice, she wrote, quote, "Comments off, to be expected when your star player is a boy." Now, as we discussed earlier this week, Gaines' post sent Simone Biles, the Olympic gymnast, into a frenzy. She accused Gaines of bullying the trans-identified athlete. Biles also wrote, quote, "You're truly sick. All this campaigning because you lost a race. Straight up sore loser. You should be uplifting the trans community, perhaps finding a way to make sports inclusive or creating a new avenue where trans feel safe in sports, maybe a transgender category in all sports." And then for good measure, Biles followed up by writing, quote, "Bully someone your own size, which would ironically be a male." Now, the other day, we talked about all the reasons why this rant was highly ironic, especially since Simone Biles isn't exactly known for her sportsmanship or for her feminine appearance, frankly. We also discussed why her idea of a trans-only league is idiotic for like a million reasons. For one thing, there wouldn't be enough players, nor would anyone want to watch them play. Additionally, you'd have to decide how to classify the, non-binaries and demisexuals and two-spirits and the 50,000 other genders. Do they play with the trans men or the trans women? Do we need a separate league for every variation? Things can get pretty complicated, especially when the trans furries show up and refuse to wear the standard uniforms. And of course, on top of all these problems, a trans-only league makes no sense because the current system of dividing athletes based on biological reality and not fantasy works perfectly fine and has worked for many generations. You know what this country needs more of? Strong men, mentally, physically, and morally. But most men these days aren't operating at full strength. worn down by long days, poor sleep, and worse nutrition. That's why I recommend Responsible Man, a new line of supplements built for men who lead. No fluff, no fads, just what your body actually needs to perform. It starts with Emerson Multivitamin, 33 physician-formulated ingredients to support your energy, focus, heart, and immune system. It's not your grandpa's Centrum. And now Responsible Man has released their new product called Theodore Protein, named after Theodore Roosevelt. It's built to fuel the kind of strength and grit that modern men are, very often missing. With 25 grams of premium American-made whey protein and no junk fillers, it closes the gap fast. Here's the deal. Go to responsibleman.com, use code Walsh, and get 50% off your first order. Strong men build strong families and a strong country. Responsibleman.com, code Walsh. So those are just a few problems with Simone Biles' tweets. Additionally, a few people also pointed out that Simone Biles' position was also hypocritical because back in 2017, she wrote on Twitter, quote, "Good thing guys don't compete against girls or he'd take all the gold medals," close quote, referring to a male gymnast at the time. Now, presumably that post was written before Biles had lost her mind, but in 2025, Biles, as with so many other prominent public figures, is completely subservient to leftist ideology. And more than that, she's vindictive and openly hostile to anyone who expresses a contrary position, even if it's the position that most Americans hold, the one that happens to correspond with reality. But here's what elevates the story beyond a typical social media spat, and this is why it's worth revisiting, is that 5 years ago, for these posts attacking Riley Gaines, Simone Biles would have received unrelenting praise from every organ of the left. The media would be asking her how she managed to be so brave in the face of Riley Gaines' fascism. Activist groups would be clamoring to invite her to speaking engagements. Every podcast would be elevating her as a kind of trans messiah. And then they would have had Riley Gaines banned from the internet, of course. I mean, that's how things used to work. In 2020, just to give you one of many, many examples, the comedian Graham Linehan was permanently banned from Twitter for tweeting, quote, "Men aren't women, though." I mean, that's all it took 5 years ago. You'd get dogpiled and permanently censored for stating the truth about human biology. But that's not what happens anymore. Very few prominent people came out to defend Simone Biles after her post. Instead, she was excoriated by almost everyone. And the backlash was so significant that just a few days after this initial post, Simone Biles put out a lengthy statement apologizing to Riley Gaines. Here's what she posted. Quote, "I wanted to follow up from my last tweets. I've always believed competitive equity and inclusivity are both essential in sport. The current system doesn't adequately balance these important principles, which often lead to frustration and heated exchanges, and it didn't help for me to get personal with Riley, which I apologize for." Close quote. The statement continues for a bit, and we'll read the rest of it in a moment, but it's worth taking a second to think about the words competitive equity, because it's a real triumph of word salad. What exactly is competitive equity? Of course, when leftists say equity, we know what they mean. They mean allowing certain demographics, like self-identifying trans people in this case, to gain advantages over others. But that's fundamentally incompatible with the idea of competition. And the whole point of equity is to eliminate competition. So, that's the left's preferred, so that the left's preferred groups win. And so the idea of competitive equity just makes no sense. But if you can make it past the oxymoron, Simone Biles does get around to apologizing, which we just heard. And then she writes this, quote, "These are sensitive, complicated issues that I truly don't have the answers or solutions to, but I believe it starts with empathy and respect. I was not advocating for policies that compromise fairness in women's sports. My objection is to singling out children for public scrutiny in ways that feel personal and harmful. Individual athletes, especially kids, should never be the focus of criticism of a flawed system that they have no control over. I believe sports organizations have a responsibility to come up with rules supporting inclusion while maintaining fair competition. We all want a future for sport that is fair, inclusive, and respectful. XOXO Simone." Now, as far as apologies go, this one obviously could have and should have gone much further. She should have dropped the word salad and stated plainly that boys don't belong in girls' sports, period. And many conservatives are pointing that out. They're pointing out that her statement sounds phony, like it was crafted by a PR agency or an AI program. When you compare that statement to the original tweets, it's pretty clear it was not written by the same human. or by a human at all. So they don't believe that the apology is sincere. And they're right about that, of course. But I think the conservatives that are saying this are missing the point. You know, the fact that a very famous and popular public figure felt the need to apologize and get a crisis PR firm involved and issue a PR statement after tweeting in support of the trans agenda is a clear sign of a very significant sea change in our culture. It's not really important that the statement was insincere or incomplete. In fact, that in some ways makes it more significant. The fact that, like, we all know she doesn't believe what she's saying, but she felt the need to pretend. See, this always used to go the other way around. It always used to go the other way around, that it was people who are rational people and conservatives who were issuing these groveling apologies that were insincere, pretending they believe things they don't. And now it's happening this way, where you've got someone. Now, so does she actually believe that? No, of course she doesn't. Is she actually sorry for what she said about Riley Gaines? Of course she's not. But she felt the need to pretend. Okay, which really tells you something. What's important is that this series of events, any kind of retreat by Simone Biles in this scenario, would have been unthinkable just a few years ago. It's yet another sign of just how thoroughly the right has won on the issue of gender ideology. If this had happened in, say, 2021, there would have been a whole army of public figures circling the wagons around Simone Biles. And that didn't really happen this time. And that's particularly notable because it's supposedly Pride Month. You might remember Pride Month. I mean, this is supposed to be the time of year when trans activists become even more unhinged and hostile than they normally are. They're supposed to be emboldened. They're supposed to loudly shout down people like Riley Gaines. They're supposed to dominate the conversation so that no one's allowed to point out that a male just won a girls' softball tournament. But no one's talking about Pride Month anymore. LGBT activists are too demoralized and discredited to celebrate at the moment. That's the same reason they're not really defending Simone Biles. I mean, it's a few voices here and there chimed in, but very few. And it's why she was forced to apologize. And it's why the Minnesota High School Softball League had to shut down its social media feeds. Every single one of these liars is aware of the fact that they've lost most of their public support. Now, yes, technically speaking, Champlin Park High School was named the winner of the state girls softball championship. But as you watch the players and the coaches gloat, it's hard not to be reminded of all the other frauds throughout history who simply took things too far, too quickly. Pathetic institutions like Champlin Park High School and the Minnesota State Softball League, along with cowardly mouthpieces like Simone Biles, no longer have the cultural power that they had just a few years ago. And with this latest apology, even if it was generated by a PR firm using ChatGPT, it's evident that Simone Biles and the rest of the LGBT cult are slowly coming around to the reality of their own irrelevance. If you'd like to see what else I have to say, you can access my full show by going to dailywire.com or by going to the Matt Walsh Show Twitter page. Hope to see you there. Godspeed.